Imagine waking up, and the world around you is no longer the one you once knew. The sky is gray. The wind cuts your skin like knives. And before you, no fields, no forests, only a frozen ocean, cold, vast, and unforgiving. This is not a winter storm. This is the Pleistocene epoch, the great ice age that began 2.6 million years ago. And it lasted over 2 million years, a time when Earth no longer revolved around spring or fall, but around oceans swallowed, continents buried, and life tested to its limits. The word Pleistocene may sound scientific, but behind it lies tragedy, struggle, and survival. It comes from the Greek pleistos, most, and kainos, new, as if nature was resetting its rules, and humanity, merely a pawn on this brutal chessboard. Yet it was here, amid ice and shadow, that humans first appeared, not as modern Homo sapiens, but as our ancient ancestors, creatures who stood upright, discovered fire, trembled, but did not turn back. We are not simply products of the Pleistocene. We are its children. We learned to remember, to shape stone into weapons, to share meat from fallen prey, and most importantly, to survive together. But before Homo could rise, the world belonged to another force. Ice. Massive glaciers, miles thick, stretched from the Arctic down to New York, from Scandinavia to Siberia. Ice didn't just cover the Earth, it crushed it. And every 100,000 years, the ice would melt, then freeze again. Earth became a massive biological clock, each tick a cold reckoning. Those who failed to adapt vanished like dust in the wind. And in this ruthless game, humans took their first steps. Part 2. The frozen continent. When landscape shifted shape. Imagine a giant white beast. It doesn't roar. It has no claws, but it crushes entire continents, meter by meter. That beast is the glacier. And it didn't merely pass through, it invaded. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, as the climate cooled, glaciers over 3 kilometers thick began to crawl down from the far north. They didn't flow like rivers, but crawled like a slow nightmare, cold, silent, unstoppable. Forests were flattened, mountains scraped clean, rocks ground into dust. Even Earth's crust was pressed down like a sponge under the weight of ice. The scars remain. Great lakes in North America, once valleys, now carved to their core. Canada's coast, sunken under the weight of ice. Deep fjords of Norway, frozen wounds in the heart of geology. In Europe, Germany, Poland, and Scandinavia sank into a snowy silence. In Russia, Siberia's grasslands turned into tundra, a frozen wasteland where no trees grow, yet mammoths still marched. And then, something strange happened. The ice made the sea retreat. Water was locked inside the massive glaciers, causing sea levels to drop by hundreds of meters. Areas that were once seafloor became land. Britain was connected to France by ice. Iceland touched northern Europe. Animals and humans crossed icy bridges as if walking paths from legend, though every step came with the risk of death. The world became a strange chessboard, each move a gamble. Will this be forest, ice, or sea? There were no national borders. Only one boundary mattered, the line between life and death. In the whirlwind of the Ice Age, the ground beneath our feet never stood still. It shifted, cracked, vanished, and those who could not shift with it were buried forever. Part 3. Age of the Beasts, Giants of the Ice. When Earth grew so cold that life itself seemed impossible, nature responded in the most unexpected way, with size. Not small, agile, or clever creatures, but towering giants. Ice Age titans that emerged from the fog of the Pleistocene, built not just to survive, but to rule. First among them, the woolly mammoth, Mammothus primigenius. Standing nearly 4 meters tall and weighing up to 6 tons. Massive, yet not clumsy. Its coat had 2 layers, soft wool inside, coarse outer hair like armor, small ears to preserve heat, and long, curved tusks used to clear snow in search of grass. But the most remarkable thing, they communicated in infrasound, deep, low-frequency vibrations that traveled through frozen ground to alert and guide their herd. A silent network spread across icy steppes. Mammoths weren't survival machines, they were family. Herds that remembered migration routes across thousands of kilometers and protected one another like clans. Not far from them roamed a solitary but no less majestic creature, the woolly rhinoceros, Coelodonta antiquitatis. Its horn long as a warrior's spear, its nostrils laced with blood vessels to warm the air before it reached the lungs. Its figure was carved onto cave walls. Like in Chauvet, the humans didn't just hunt it, they revered it. Then came the giant deer, Megaloceros. With antlers spanning 3.6 meters, it didn't just live, it performed. A spectacle of evolution and courtship. But as forests rose and replaced open grasslands, those same antlers became a curse. The king of the plains became a prisoner among trees and disappeared. Further south lived the giant ground sloth. Despite its name, it wasn't lazy. It towered 6 meters tall, with muscles like an elephant and claws that curved like scythes. It moved slowly, but no predator dared challenge it, except one: humans. And then there were the predators, nightmarish hunters sculpted by cold and scarcity. Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, its daggers of teeth built for a single lethal strike. Direwolves and Ice Age hyenas, powerful jaws, pack tactics, a ruthless coordination that turned hunts into warfare. All of them, grazers and killers alike, were forged by ice, hunger, and time. But then, they vanished. Not because they were weak, not because evolution failed, but because they met something far more dangerous than teeth or size. Homo sapiens, a smaller species, but one with plans, with language, with teamwork, and with the mind to bring giants to their knees. Part 4. The first human footsteps, from ape to man. Every story has a beginning, but the story of us begins with a tiny skull, silent inside a block of limestone. In 1924, at a forgotten quarry in South Africa, scientists uncovered something strange, a face like a chimp, but with a skull base that pointed straight down, a sign of upright walking. Not ape, not human, but something in between. Australopithecus africanus, the spark that ignited the journey of Homo. It didn't craft tools, but it stood tall, observed the world, climbed trees to escape predators. And above all, it survived. Then time moved forward, and evolution accelerated. Next came Homo habilis, the handyman, with a larger brain, nimble fingers, the first to chip stone and cut meat. Then Homo rudolfensis, with a broader face and more advanced brain. And then Homo ergaster, whose build was nearly modern, with tools made deliberately and with intent. But the true leap came with Homo erectus, about 1.6 meters tall, sturdy frame, stable stride. They walked farther than any creature before them, across deserts, valleys, continents. But progress had its price. A bigger brain meant a wider skull, but the pelvis remained narrow for efficient walking. So infants were born earlier, with smaller brains, requiring years of care to mature. And with that, something miraculous happened. Childhood, a concept unheard of in the animal kingdom. That long childhood sparked culture. It demanded groups to stay together, to teach, to protect. From this, language began to form. From this, memory passed on. From this, culture was born. We are not just the creatures who stand. We are the ones who learn, who remember, who dream. And the first human footsteps were the ones that led to civilization. Part 5. Conquering the world, the first to leave Africa. Before there were maps, before there were borders, there was a single footstep pressed into unfamiliar soil, the first human trace outside of Africa. It wasn't left by a warrior, not by an explorer, at least not in the way we imagine today. It was Homo erectus, a being who had just begun crafting stone tools, had only recently learned to tend fire, and now was learning how to leave the place of its birth. From East Africa, they followed valleys, crossed mountains, trailed migrating animals, and moved along the rivers until they reached lands no one had ever touched. In Georgia, fossil skulls nearly 1.8 million years old were discovered in Dmanisi. In China, they left remains at Zhoukoudian. In Java, Indonesia, in 1891, a Dutch doctor named Eugene Dubois found a partial skull and femur by the Solo River, what he called the Java Man. Even in Thailand, fossil remains of Lampang Man were found in limestone caves, evidence that Homo erectus reached Southeast Asia over 1 million years ago. But the question that stunned the world: how did they reach Java? During the Ice Age, sea levels were lower, but straits still separated islands. No boats, no maps, no compasses, just survival instinct and evolutionary daring. Maybe they drifted on storm debris. Maybe they clung to floating roots, fallen trees, or maybe they just tried. Whatever the method, they succeeded. No one called them heroes, but they were the first to expand the world. They didn't build temples, but every step they took helped draw the first map of humanity. They were the first to leave safety behind, to cross geography, to overcome fear, with nothing but bare feet and an unbreakable will to survive. Part 6. The first flame, tools, fire, and the roots of language. Before the wheel, before writing, our ancestors had fire. No one knows the exact moment it happened, but over 1 million years ago, in a cave somewhere in Africa, or perhaps in what is now Israel, Homo erectus leaned over a pile of glowing embers and understood this could save a life. Fire was not invented, it was discovered. Lightning, volcanoes, friction between branches, nature created fire. But while animals fled, Homo erectus approached. They preserved the flame, fed it dry leaves, and nurtured it into light. In ancient caves, traces remain: charred bones, blackened stones, ash piles. Proof that they didn't just use fire, but kept it alive. Not just for warmth, but to cook meat, drive off predators, and bring people together. Beside the fire were stone tools. At first, just sharp pebbles, later hand axes, crude blades, pointed tips. They weren't pretty, but they were powerful. They let humans crack bones, skin animals, and break open marrow, the prized nutrition predators often left behind. But the true strength of Homo erectus didn't lie in fire or stone. It lay in how they used them together. They stopped hunting alone. They organized. They waited for the right moment. And, though they lacked speech, they communicated through howls, growls, chest thumping, sounds that seemed instinctual but were the earliest seeds of language. Fire, tools, communication. Together, they didn't just keep Homo erectus alive. They lit the spark of what we now call human culture. From the first ember by a rock wall, from the first tool in a rough hand, a silent revolution had begun. And from that moment forward, humans would never be like any other creature on Earth. Part 7. The other humans, ancestors, allies, or enemies. If you've ever thought that humans were once alone on this planet, think again. Homo erectus, though strong and pioneering, was not alone in the Pleistocene. They lived among a forest of humans, branches, cousins, species that looked like us, but evolved in entirely different directions. Homo heidelbergensis lived in both Africa and Europe, considered the common ancestor of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. They hunted elephants, buried their dead, and may have developed the first rudimentary rituals. Neanderthals, the most famous of our ancient cousins, stocky, cold-adapted survivors who lived in caves, crafted refined tools, and eventually vanished. But before they disappeared, they left something behind: their genes. If you're of European or Asian descent, you likely carry fragments of Neanderthal DNA. Denisovans, almost a ghost species, no complete skeleton has been found, just a few teeth, a finger bone. but their genes live on in the people of Tibet and Papua, helping them survive at extreme altitudes. Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit, stood less than a meter tall. They lived on the island of Flores. Despite their size, they made tools, hunted, and thrived for tens of thousands of years. Homo luzonensis, discovered in the Philippines, represents a completely different branch, proving that Asia was no less diverse than Africa in human evolution. Homo antecessor, from Spain, might be a link between Erectus and Sapiens. Their bones show cut marks, possibly from stone tools, perhaps a sign of cannibalism. And then, one chilling truth emerges. We Homo sapiens are a blend. In our blood live traces of those who once walked beside us. Human evolution was not a straight line. It was a dense, tangled tree, some branches broken, others blooming. We did not rise alone. We rose among those who looked eerily like us. Part 8. The end of the Ice Age, when forests stole the grasslands. Around 11,700 years ago, the Earth began to warm, faster than in any previous cycle. Glaciers started retreating. The gray skies turned blue, and on the once frozen ground, grass returned. But it was not the same grass that had once fed the mammoths. The cold, dry tundras, the kingdom of mammoths and woolly rhinos, were overtaken by forests. Trees spread, swamps formed. The vast steppes that once fed the Ice Age giants turned into traps of mud and shadows. The mammoths couldn't adapt. Their food vanished. Migration paths were blocked. Some were hunted to extinction. A few held out on Wrangel Island until just 4,000 years ago. Then, silence. The woolly rhino, the giant deer, the ground sloth, the cave lion. One by one, they disappeared, not because they were weak, but because the earth changed roles too quickly. And in the shadows of the newly growing forests, a new kind of predator emerged, one who waited, who planned, who wielded bone spears and fire, who could outsmart beings 100 times more powerful. Their name, Homo sapiens. They didn't kill by instinct, they killed by design. Together, strategically. And the extinction of the Ice Age giants, it wasn't just the closing chapter of a wild world. It was the opening line of civilization. Because as the forests grew, humans stopped wandering. They settled. They looked at the soft earth beneath their feet and planted the first seeds. Where mammoths once walked, now grew fields of wheat. And from fires beside hunted carcasses, humans built villages, then cities, then empires. Pleistocene has ended, but it never truly left us. It lives on, in our spines, in our memories, in our ambition. We are not just the descendants of the Ice Age. We are the ones continuing its unfinished story with technology, with memory, and with an unshakable curiosity. If you believe the journey from fire to genome, from glaciers to gene editing, is something worth telling, if you believe that understanding the past is the clearest way to envision the future, subscribe now, because many more chapters remain, about the creatures that vanished, about the humans we've never known, and maybe about you in the great river of evolutionary history. Stay with us. Help write the next chapter of the human story. Subscribe to the channel now. Don't let your footprint disappear from this journey.